Good morning, everybody. Ellarigu namaskara. How are you feeling today? How's the energy? A little quiet, I find. You're in Bangalore. Look at the weather. The roads are a bit bumpy, but the skies are clear. We should be feeling great at the end of a wonderful year just out of the pandemic. So let's hear it for Bhumi. I volunteer and volunteering. Guys, let's give them. Thank you. Thank you. You know, I'm really privileged to be at this very important conference because I truly believe, and 5th year, it's something to really celebrate. I thank Venkat Krishnan, founder of Give India and many other wonderful movements for inviting me here. He's really someone who leads by example. He gives entirely of himself, his money, his pocket, his heart, his mind, and a lot of himself. So hats off, Venkat. So, you know, like many of us, I grew up on stories of volunteerism in my family. Because my grandfather, my father's father, Baba Sahib Soman, Sadashiv Lakshman Soman, was among those clutch of people in 1917 who were the first to respond to Gandhiji's call during the Champaran agitation. Gandhiji said, I need people here to support this community. They were being, you know, the whole indigo agitation was over. The people were in deep distress. It was, we forget just how brutal the British rule in India was. And Gandhiji just wanted good people to come. And my grandfather was on that first train that went from Belgaum all the way to West Champaran in Bihar. To stay there, to help build the first ashram in Biti Harwa, to set up schools, to build toilets, to work with the local farmers, so on and on and on. And he did this. Why did he do this? Because really, the big question of our times, as Martin Luther King said, I paraphrase him, what is it in our lives that we are going to do for others? I think he answered that question himself. And his story, and you know, he gave up, his wife was pregnant, he was a lawyer, but half the time he was busy getting the two conflicting parties to agree out of court, which means he didn't get any fees. My grandmother didn't very much like this strategy, but that's how he lived. And so the most meaningful thing he could do in his life was to join Gandhiji, remained a Gandhian, worked hard for the freedom of our country, and died just before independence, but left a legacy that still goes on in our family. So for me, this power of volunteering to put society before self was always held up as an adarsh, a goal, a vision, and an ideal. And it has really animated the spirit of all our lives and given us so much as an ideal. So for me, the highest personal ethic is to volunteer. As we all know, the word volunteer comes from the French volontaire, which means willingly. And that's the most important thing. Willingly, from intrinsic motives, from inside, we wish to give of ourselves, right? One's time, one's talent, one's money, whatever we can give to enhance the greater public good. And so this volunteering, it is from self to create society, to create a better Samaj. And it's a very English word actually. So if we try to bridge it in our languages, there's no exact translation. So then we land up saying seva maybe, or swayam seva. You yourself give forward. But maybe if we were to search for a common animating spirit to bridge these two, volunteering and seva, maybe we can turn to a wonderful word which concisely illuminates the universal truth that I am because you are, right? You are because I am, Ubuntu. And I think that word really captures why all of us in why this room is so full of people, because we understand intrinsically our deep connections, and that unless we keep up the flame of seva, of giving forward of ourselves, we cannot get back either the society that we want. So seva is as old as human beings are, and even primates do seva actually. In some sense, they serve each other. But Margaret Mead, and I won't give her most famous quote, but you know that she said that the first sign of civilization that she could uncover was when they found a a skeleton with a healed femur. Many of you must be knowing about this. And what did the healed femur from so many thousands of, tens of thousands of years ago imply? In much of the animal world, sometimes when a weak animal has a limb that is broken, the other herds move on sometimes and they just leave the animal to die. But a healed femur means that even when that person could not walk, had broken his thigh bone, without which he could not fend for himself, somebody was caring for this person and probably getting nothing back in return, which is why Margaret Mead called this the dawn of human civilization, where there was proof of volunteerism, of seva, of service before self. So volunteering has been ever since strong and active in human society all around the world. In fact, UN Volunteers, which is an organization of the UN, claims that 1 billion, not million, 1 billion people have been volunteering at some point in their lives globally. Now, I'm not sure exactly how they define volunteering, but that's 1/8 of the population, that's 1/8 of humankind that has self-declared that they are doing some form of volunteering in their lives. And what excites me about that is, if each of these 1 billion could inspire just one more each, that makes it 2 billion. And if those 2 billion could inspire each one inspire one more, that makes it 4 billion people, right? And imagine that's half of all humanity. And maybe that should be our goal. Even in this room, can we manifest this idea that half of humanity will be trying to serve somebody else, not from morning till night, but at some part of the day. And we should all think over the next 2 years, if that is the goal, then working backwards, how do we all have to organize the volunteer movement so that half the world feels animated to give of themselves at some point in their lives? So, I do believe that seva and giving of oneself is absolutely critical in today's time. Okay, it strengthens the demos. We live proudly in a democracy, and that volunteer spirit strengthens democracy. In fact, it is the heart of absolutely at the core heart of building out the Samaj that we all want to live in. And I would say that because democracy is not created for us and gifted to us by leaders, okay? Democracy is of the people, by the people, and for the people. And as it is said, because that's why people, the Samaj, has the foundational supremacy to keep democracy alive. This democracy of the Samaj goes way beyond electoral democracy. It's not just about voting every 5 years, or in India, you have to vote much more than 5 years because there are multiple elections. So we get a chance to exercise our electoral muscle quite a bit. But really, democracy is much more than about voting. And inside, we all know that. But if eternal vigilance is the price of freedom, and don't forget that, we cannot take our freedoms for granted. Eternal vigilance in a democracy is the price for our freedoms. Then I'm going to say today that maybe eternal empathy is the price for a good society. And that's something that we need to remember. In fact, none of us would be sitting so happily and comfortably and proudly in this room as citizens of a free nation, if not for the tremendous waves of volunteerism across the length and breadth of the country for 100 years actually. Tens of lakhs of people participate in our historic freedom struggle, as you all know, our unique satyagraha. And for me, the lasting image is always a very common and powerful one, that of the Dandi March, 1930, March to April 5th, 24 days, led by Gandhiji at the young age of 61. He started just picking up a fistful of salt against an unfair tax that the British had imposed. And bit by bit, thousands of people joined this brave act of selfless service to the idea of a free nation. And these acts are what we must really be grateful for all of us being able to sit here today. And especially the young people in the room need to look deep into our history books. all kinds of history books, diversity of history books, to really understand what has kept this diverse nation together. And a lot of it has to do with the selfless voluntary service of not just countless leaders that made up India's modern nation, but many, many unnamed ones, just like my grandfather. Now, another very highlight of volunteerism examples in India was the 67-68 Bihar famine. At that time, crops had failed, the weather had let us down, there were policies perhaps that needed to have been different, but lakhs of people were facing death by starvation. And that actually became the cradle for the volunteer movement of India, the modern volunteer movement of India. I know dozens of people now getting on in their years who are so troubled by the fact that people in that time could be so close to death by preventable death that they left cushy jobs. Vijay Mahajan is one of them. There are many others from Pradhan. It was the birth of the Jayaprakash Narayan movement. So that crisis really brought out the humanity in many people, and it also birthed many of the non-profits in India today. So we are all wired to reach out to other humans in suffering. That's just one example, and there has been a tradition of service in our society. I don't know how many of you have heard of the practice of Lash in Rajasthan and other places, where people volunteer to go from one village to the other to create any public works, usually around water, digging farm ponds, laying roads. It could be any public good, physical public good that is being created, and they all take off in their bullock carts or their tractors, go to some designated village, do Shramadan for the whole day. They get a magnificent meal cooked by the local villagers, and then they trudge back home with the pride of having helped that village create its own new public infrastructure. And because it is natural, those villagers then similarly reciprocate in a history of mutualism that has run through the veins of this country. So, and today also in India, there are thousands of organizations. Many are faith-based, many are ideology-based, that depend entirely on volunteers. And I don't even need to name them. Right here in Bangalore, we have so many like Art of Living and so many others that get volunteers across caste, class, and religion simply to serve others as much as they can. We all know about the langars, and there are so many other examples, more modern examples, one that I am very proud to have been associated with. One is Asar. How many of you have heard about Asar, the education report that comes out every year? It will be soon out in January, and it is such a simple idea, but tens of thousands of volunteers, literally in every district of India, come forward, go to a village. They have do a statistical sampling, sit, and I have participated in these surveys where you sit down and say, come to the children of the house, let's see how much you have learnt in school. And all the children, everybody gathers and becomes like a festival. And then we have learnt that in fact we have a very long way to go to ensure every child in school and learning well. But that also was driven by volunteer energy. And the spirit of that, what that volunteerism can achieve, I have given you already so many examples. But for me, volunteerism can go. The ideal volunteer is not one animated by an ideology or a sect or a religion or a faith, but only with the highest form of humanitarianism. It doesn't matter who is in front of you, which religion, which country, which geography, which choice, which anything they belong to. We see the human in you. And as I said, because I am, because you are. So when I do something for you, it is for both of us together. That I feel is the highest ideal of volunteerism. And that's why volunteers don't get paid, someone said, not because they are worthless, but because they are priceless. And I think sometimes we need to remember, I didn't say that, somebody called Sharon said that, but it's a beautiful quote. And I think even when you're in corporations, and I know corporations, and there are many represented here, have large volunteer programs, which is really good because we are getting more and more data that employees want to work for corporations that do good, that are not there for greed, that are not there only for profit, but are there to be citizens of the societies that they participate in the markets of. And that young people especially want to be very sure that their companies are doing good as much as they are doing well. And volunteering is a huge part of that. But even when people go out as corporate volunteers, can we reach out deep into our hearts to find that humanitarianism about all? It doesn't matter which corporate logo is on your t-shirt. What you have to find when you go out there is that human thing for which there is no logo except that inside our hearts. And so that is the opportunity really for corporations today to allow their employees to do much more strategic, long-term work in communities. Because I have absolutely no doubt that eventually, even if we were to just look at the balance sheets, and today ESG is a big part of balance sheets, even that bottom line is going to get enhanced if we first look at this front line. So philanthropy, corporations play a huge role. After all, volunteers also have to eat. Volunteers also have to dress. Volunteers also have children to put into school. And that's where philanthropy plays a big role in supporting the acts of volunteering. And I think in India, this is really a call to action to philanthropists, foundations in the room. How can we together support a national movement of volunteers? How can we help not professionalize, platformize it, so that I keep getting asked, what can I do? What can I do? And our philanthropy is not really set up to just take in volunteers. I wish it were, because it's a hard thing to do. So how can we knock our heads together to see how is it possible to find, to create a platform? And I promised Venkat, we have a team that we call Societal Thinking Team, where we look at how can we create, what is the architecture required to create urgent impact at scale? And how can we distribute the ability to solve in context? How can we create a technology backbone that allows people to co-create on top of it? And one of the goals we must all keep for ourselves is to create that enabling infrastructure so that millions more people can join the volunteer movement. We live in a digital age, and volunteering has also gone digital. How many of you have ever signed a petition for change.org? Well, the ones who haven't, there must be 3 or 4, try it out. Sometimes it can be clicktivism, means it's very easy to just say yes or something like that and not to know what happens next. Though change.org is quite relentless, it tells you what happens next. And I know the young, enthusiastic founder who set it up, but it's one pathway in the digital age, okay, to start your volunteering journey. And it's very important because it's the first step that then leads to the next step. So there are many such innovative apps and platforms that have really increased volunteering in India. But I always, and the techie volunteers of the digital age, iSpirit was set up purely to use tech talent to help other non-profits, to help ideas develop further. I know when Nandan set up the Aadhaar team, dozens of highly qualified, highly successful corporate professionals from around the world wrote to him and said, can I join and give my time? Some spent two years here in India, gave up everything that they were doing, often from America and Europe, and came and just gave their time and talent to set up India's digital ID. Similarly, with all the other public digital infrastructure that is being rolled out in India today, India has the best public digital infra in the world because it is all open, free, and unleashing innovation everywhere. It is the foundation of economic democracy in our country, and it is powered by volunteer energy. So it's very, very important to understand that. And in fact, talking of technology, all of us are sitting here. I don't even need to ask how many of you have mobile phones and how many of you spend how many hours on your phones and on your computers. But we should really doff our hats to Tim Berners-Lee. He was then at CERN, but honestly, what he did was to create, of course, HTML and HTTP, which is the backbone of the World Wide Web, which is really today's internet. But his energy of really society before self, allowed the internet to be completely open in the public domain, allowing people to co-create on it, and just imagine what public good that man has unleashed in the last 30 years. So that's the kind of energy and impact that can come from that creative impulse to do good for others. So I think to conclude, because I would really like to have a very interactive session for a little while before my time is called out. Of course, we need more visionaries like Tim Berners-Lee. Of course, we need more Mahatmas like Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi. But you know, there is a bit of both in each one of us. And surely we saw that in the pandemic. How many of you reached out to somebody else in the pandemic? To do the slide. There you go. I rest my case, every hand went up. So we have internalized more deeply perhaps than ever in our lifetimes that how much we are interconnected. No matter if we are rich, no matter if we are not so rich, all of us are in the same boat. Some of us are in the upper decks, I must admit, but we are all rowing in the same ocean. And the Ubuntu has come really to the fore. So, as Mahatma Gandhi said, the best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others. And I must say that sometimes in our philanthropy, I can feel a bit remote from what's actually happening on the ground. And I really got re-energized when I participated in a small project outside my office with the Ugly Indians. Some of you have heard of Ugly Indian, right? It allows everybody a chance to participate in just taking agency to improve our own society, our own roads, our own infrastructure. I can do it. I don't need to wait for the BBMP, the electricity board, or anybody else. I can do it with you, because together we are what makes the Samaj possible. And I was able to work for half an hour in the hot sun, picking up stones and making what they call a beauty spot from an ugly spot. And it reconnected me to say, it's so easy to give of one's wealth and so hard to give of oneself. So let's enjoy and explore and continue on that journey of giving of ourselves, as all of you in this room do, because that's why you are here at Volcon. And let's really push that half of Indians, that's only 700 million, not too many, half of us will at some point in our lives do some volunteering and put for society first before ourselves. It's doable if we all do it together. Let's push forward on that. Thank you all very much. Namaskar.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I would love to have some questions from all of you. Please go ahead. The lady in the black jacket.
We'd now like to open the floor for Q&A, but we just have one request. We request you all to kindly stick to your questions, and at this point of time, not share any personal views or
Don't worry. I'm a good moderator. I think I can be pretty quick at stopping people, because in India, if you give somebody a mic, you can't get it back.
Yes.
So we'll all be aware of that, but I'll make sure if you really have a personal human anecdote to share, we are very happy to listen to you. Please go ahead.
So thank you for bringing forward. Thank you for bringing forward the point that we are all interconnected. If somebody suffers in any part of the world, we will suffer. My thought was more on terms of ethical consumption as a volunteer and sustainability, because that goes hand in hand with volunteering or CSR. So what are your views where we should work more towards being more aware? Where are we buying our things? Where are we eating? Who are the board of directors? Like we've seen Puma being boycotted. So how do we energize us to, because money is power. When you buy something, you're actually encouraging XYZ organization. So that is something that I would like us to think, are we ethical every time we use our money? And are we sustainable in terms of water and natural resources we're using? That's also very accountable for us.
No, I think you've answered your own question. Of course, we need to be much more conscious as consumers. And my recent book, Samaj Sarkar, Bazaar, A Citizen First Approach, writes a bit about that. I encourage you to read it. If you don't want to buy it, it's available free for downloading on samajsarkarbazaar.in. No. org. samajsarkarbazaar.org. You're very welcome to download it absolutely free. If you want to buy it, that will be a nice act of volunteering as well. And all the proceeds will, of course, go to volunteering. So you'll be doing a roundabout good in that way. But you're quite right. Today, we wake up as consumers and go to sleep as consumers. We pick up our phones and click on something. We are constantly consuming things. But we can change what we consume and how we consume it, because 1 billion, 2 billion customers and consumers with one change of choice. Can you imagine the massive impact you can have? And we're actually seeing it. People are rejecting single-use plastics. People are rejecting, I would say, I don't know why they are here, but single-use water bottles, because it's quite easy to have alternatives. Please, next time, Volcon, please let's have metal bottles or refillable bottles or something. However small that is, it's important because that's going to land up in the ocean. Unfortunately, not as much gets recycled as we think. So we are so lucky. We can take back the agency. The choice is literally in our fingers. So I agree with you. There's a lot you can do on that. Thank you for bringing that up.
Hi, Rohini.
Okay, he who has the mic shall speak.
Yes, it's
okay.
here. Hi. Really inspiring conversation.
Thank you very much.
And one of the things that I'm sure inspired all of us was when you heard the number, one day 4 billion people can volunteer. And that's something that really inspires us. And the question that was kind of alive for me when I heard that was, when a volunteering organization decides to scale, it's considered to be, like volunteers are not the way to scale a solution. When any solution needs to be, you would have proven a solution using volunteers, but now it's time to scale to solve the problem in its full scale. Oh, that's something that you do through the government. You need to now engage with the government body to be able to implement it. And volunteers are not meant for scaling, but volunteering is one of the things that scales the most. There is a potential to reach 4 billion people. So how do we kind of tackle that dichotomy? There is that mindset that volunteerism cannot scale, or volunteer-based organizations cannot scale. Just wanted to get your thoughts on that.
No, actually, the largest organizations in the world are volunteer-based organizations. So that's not true. So I think nobody in this room will disagree, I am sure, that volunteerism, I think the most scalable thing in the world is actually service. That's the most scalable thing in the world by far. But of course, obviously, some things need to be scaled by Bazaar or by Sarkar. Some things can have to go, and Sarkar and Bazaar are part of Samaj, right? Sarkar and Bazaar came out of Samaj itself. So it's quite fine if you see it as a continuum, that some innovation started through service, started through volunteerism, started in the non-profit sector, eventually get embedded in either Bazaar or Sarkar, which is fine. And because God knows there's lots more to start innovating again. There's enough work for us volunteers to do till the end of our lives. So that can keep continuing in different ways. But some things, when they reach the right time and need, can move into the Sarkar or Bazaar sector. But I agree with you 100%. The most scalable thing in the whole wide world is service to others.
Hi, this is Karthi from Team Everest. We love volunteering and we promote volunteering. I want to hear, say if we want to do 10x or 20 or 100x of volunteering in India, like from what we do, how do we scale 100x? What are the next 2-3 things according to you, we should do as a country?
Yeah, no, I think first of all, and some of us are going to be working on this very seriously, certainly Venkat and I and some of our teams, we need to be able to find discoverable opportunities to volunteer, right? One is, of course, people will volunteer where they are and do what they can. But many people want to do more but don't know how to. We have to make it much, much easier for people to consistently volunteer their time and talent. And I think that has not happened. There are many great intermediary organizations in this room, like I Volunteer and Bhumi, but there need to be many more. And then we possibly need some kind of a societal platform that allows them all to discover each other. I think that is the work ahead, and we are committed to it.
Thank you.
Good morning, ma'am. This is
At the
Savana
back.
from UNICEF.
Are you?
Hi, I'm here for the back, the last.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, hi, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for the wonderful speech. Ma'am, you quoted UN saying that 1 billion people volunteer at one point in time. The question is about how to sustain that volunteerism, right? People come and volunteer, that's great, but they get pulled into so many other aspects of their life, and that sustaining is the key success in that seva bhav, right? What is your advice to us to see that sustaining of volunteering happens at every phase of life?
Yeah. I mean, that's a really difficult thing, and I think y'all are going to spend a lot of the next 2 days discussing the nitty-gritty of that. It is tough. Let's not pretend it's not tough to sustain volunteer energy. You need the structures around that, right? And that's what I'm talking about, to create the structures around volunteering. But I think points in time come when it's just the right time. As I described so many things, the famine, the salt satyagraha, the independence movement, the structures of Lash, the pandemic, right? Those are natural things. And in fact, the whole topic of your 2-day discussion is how to volunteer in the continue volunteering in the post-pandemic world. And I hope at the end of 2 days, you all will only enlighten me. I've asked people to send back notes on your conference. I want to learn too. How do we sustain volunteer energy? What I can think of, as I said, is to create the platform for discovery and co-creation, and also to enable people to not just see each other's work, but to create new opportunities. I think that is necessary. And as I said, some of us are going to work on it for sure. I think also in your work, I'm sure you can do a little more structuring around what you do so that people have more sustained opportunities. As I said, we have to make it easier. There are 100 small ways to make it easier. And I hope in the next 2 days, you all will actually come up with concrete best practices on how to make it easier for people to do volunteering in a routine way. Okay, so that's the challenge ahead of us. I agree with you. There are no easy answers, but there are many pointers. Yeah?
Hi, ma'am.
Yeah.
Here. Sorry. Oh, there. Yeah.
Oh, there you are.
Okay. So my question is just simple.
What is your name?
My name is Karthikeyan from Team Everest as
There
well.
are many Kartiks here today, is it? Okay.
Okay.
All right.
So my question is like, so when people want to volunteer, so the first thing is like, what is the social impact that they want to make sure that the volunteer that they are doing is like shown to everyone that I'm doing this stuff. And at one point of time, they feel like, it's like, okay, I've shown everyone that I have done a volunteering. So what should I do next? I don't need to do it anymore.
Yeah.
So what is that kind of challenge that happens over there?
Yeah. I know some students volunteer very vigorously just before they file for college applications, right? So, see, all of us begin somewhere. But somewhere during that journey, it becomes its own inspiration. Really, neuroscience has proved today that we are so wired for doing something good for others that it actually releases endorphins and oxytocin and all the good chemicals, right, in our bodies. So you have to keep that person in it only till he gets that first reward back. And then you can't stop really, because it is such a joyous thing in and of itself. So I think the key thing to us is, how do we handhold a person till that point where actually evolutionary biology kicks in, because we would not be a human successful species if not for the urge to serve. So I think you just need to cross that one point. So even post getting your college application, if you can make the person do one more thing for its own sake, then we will reach the numbers of volunteers that we want. So again, creative ideas on that next few acts and things that become their own reward. I think that's the point after which nobody ever stops, right? All of us have examples in our own lives of that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think continuing with the same topic that you mentioned about, students going in for it. But what is it at the school level? Is there any thoughts on how the tiny tots itself can start thinking about volunteering? Yeah. And, maybe they could have subjects as a CSR or stuff like that. I don't know. There's some schools which do encourage, but most of the schools don't actually. So,
Yeah, I think it must start in the home as well, no?
yeah, definitely.
So,
That's one
yeah.
thing. But
yes, I think there's a lot of opportunity for toddlers. Well, not toddlers, but at least
At least 5 to
primary
6 year old,
school,
you know, yeah.
primary school to do something. Like my grandson is very animated in his school. He's learned something because he says, "I am a what does he call himself? I am a nature protector." So he says, "What shall we do today, Inni," as he calls me, "to protect nature?" So he's clearly learning something. Let's do something to save nature today. Mostly it involves planting trees or understanding bugs or something like that. But you can put such ideas into young children's minds because they also want to be, they can also see, they can discover themselves, right? By discovering others and doing something good. So of course there's plenty of potential. And in fact the new national curriculum framework for foundational learning and early schooling, it has many of these elements embedded in it. Now it's up to all of us to make sure that they actually get implemented in the schools. But I agree with you, the earlier you start, the better.
Yes.
And you know how like young ones are always trying to train their parents to save water or save nature. I think it's very important to involve them in this wonderful journey of humanitarianism. Thank you. Yes, please go ahead.
Namaskaram.
Namaskara.
My name is Prabhu. I'm from Isha Vidya.
Ish.
So I just wanted to, know how do we, fulfill the expectations of the volunteer, because we are so goal oriented, and particularly in fundraising. And so how do we, understand what do they expect, and how do we, make them feel fulfilled?
What I learned from Arun Pai of Ugly Indian is really you just lead by example. You get up there and do things and people will walk with you. I think that is the bestest way I have found to inspire people. Do it yourself first. Lead by example and just see how many people will follow. I have no other greater explanation than that. Yeah, please go ahead.
Hi, this is Shravan from the Bodhi Tree. My question is very specific to the college situation. So we know that college students are always looking for projects, and off late volunteering experience also qualifies. But of course, the question is that if skill-based volunteering is something that is promoted. So I wanted to get your view on if companies start giving or treating social sector volunteering projects as equivalent to internship projects. Do you think that would make a difference in terms of giving impetus to volunteering on the whole?
Definitely. I think it's a very good idea. And skill-based volunteering especially. I mean, I think NSTC tried something like that, but I'm not sure where it has reached. But it's definitely a very good idea. And some corporations could take the lead. It's a good idea. Thank you for the suggestion. I'll talk to people when I can find people who are listening on these, because they're always looking for good ideas. Thank you. Yes, please go ahead. Who?
Sure. Yeah. Firstly, thank you so much for sharing your journey here. It's quite inspiring. And my question to you is, you rightly pointed out ESG. So how do you think that an organization, a corporate or a not-for-profit can inculcate ESG into volunteering? Because it's going to be a most important factor in the coming years. And you know that the BSRS is introducing disclosures mandatory for all the corporates. And
sorry, I missed that. Introducing what?
BRSR disclosures, ESG disclosures.
Oh, disclosures,
right?
Yes, of course.
So how do you think, is it important for a corporates and the not-for-profit to introduce the disclosures in terms of volunteering?
100%. If you go and look at Infosys's ESG disclosures, they are among the best in the world. I urge you to go and look at them. We have to put much more pressure on companies and corporations to be much more transparent and much more authentic. Because ESG is not some whitewashing you put on the walls, right? It is genuinely linked to the success of your business, and more corporations are beginning to see it. Right now, there's still a bit of, airbrushing going on, but it's up to all of us, to hold companies accountable. Never forget that we are the Samaj, we have the power. We must exercise it and corporations and government, nobody can not bend to genuine public pressure. So it's just begun the journey where the public is holding business accountable to ESG, right? Apart from the government's regulatory frameworks. So it's a journey that's begun and has to become more transparent and more authentic over time. And obviously volunteering is going to be a big part of it. So it's a journey that I'm excited about. And it's up to all of us to continue to find ways to hold corporations accountable, right? That is the power we all have. We have to awaken it in us without fear and favor. Not easy. Just like volunteering is not easy. But what is easy and fulfilling? Almost nothing, right? So the journey is going to be hard. Look, I'm not here like some oracle with answers to everything, okay? I'm also on the journey together with you. So if anybody has a really powerful anecdote to share before we close, please do so about your experience with volunteering or your experience with attracting good volunteers. Anyone? A good story.
I don't have a story, but
Okay,
I had a question.
you can ask a question.
I just want to announce this would be the last question.
Yes.
We're running out of time.
Okay, thank you. So, hello, ma'am. This is Prem from Sampark Sathi Foundation. Volunteering is definitely needed to scale, but alongside volunteering, we also need collaboration, right? So, how do we inculcate this feeling of collaboration within this ecosystem? Because it's not me, it's not I, we are all in this together, right? So how do we inculcate this feeling of collaboration and co-creation?
Yeah, no, it's a good question because collaboration is the key. But you can do a volunteering alone. Like one person, each one teach one was a big thing that was working for a short while. And in fact, there's lots of organizations that do that. So again, organizations, intermediaries are needed to enable good collaboration and not just temporary collaboration. So again, I go back to that, the structures of the intermediary organizations that make it easy to collaborate, right? In any case, if you're doing some task like building out a public infra, cleaning up a public spot, or improving facilities in a school, you can't do it alone. And I'll tell you, a good storyteller, if you can carry your story well, you will attract collaborators very quickly. So one of the things all of us must focus on is to tell our stories much better, because we believe in what we are doing and what we are saying. We need to hone our skills to carry the message better or to have powerful symbolism. Just imagine just picking up one small fist of salt, what that can do. What are the metaphors in 2022 that all of us together can visualize so that as we take the next few steps, 1 million people will come along with us. That's the challenge for all of you today. Thank you so much for having me here, and all the very best I'll talk to you offline. All the very best for your next 2 days. I'm looking forward to getting inputs on what all you did so that we can learn together with you. Namaskara, dhanyavad.